Hello everyone, Nadezhda here, and today we're going to learn how to create a professional title block in Revit. So let's begin. I'm going to go to File, New, and I'm going to create the new title block family. I'm now taken to the title block folder of the family templates, and now I'm going to choose which of the format I want to be creating. And I'm going to choose, for example, A2. And I click open. Now we are given the outer boundaries, but we do need to create the rest of the lines. So first we are going to offset these boundary lines. So I take the line tool and I define the offset of, for example, 15 millimeters. And I take the rectangle tool and I create these offset lines. Next, I will draft the lines I need. So I take the line tool again and I add the couple of lines. Let's just define the offset of 100 again. And I draft this part of my title block. And the next line I'm going to offset by 70 millimeters and draw something like this. I will use the trim tool to get rid of these lines. And next I will take the line tool and draft parts of my title block. Let's just give it, for example, 30 millimeters height here. And then offset by 5 and add one part that is going to be, for example, 14 millimeters. And copy that. I will just offset this for 3 millimeters, so all of these lines are of the same distance. To add a little bit of design to it, I'm just going to create these little arcs in the edges so it looks a little bit prettier. And I'm going to trim this part to get rid of those little corners. I'm now going to copy it to the upper portions of my title block here and here. I'm now going to mirror it to the other side. I select these arcs. I take the mirror draw axis tool and I make sure that copy option is selected so this left side stays where it is. And now I just trim these parts as well, and I also need to mirror it to the other portion of this rectangle. I mirror, I make sure to place it where it's supposed to be, and I do the same for the upper parts. I use the trim tool to trim everything. And this is what we get. Of course, you can design your title block any way you want. It is simply just drafting the lines and then adding the parameters and everything else. I will add one more line here, and the next step is adding the parameters. But before we continue with the lesson, let's hear a word of a sponsor, which is also again me. If you're ready to take your Revit skills from basic modeling to full professional project documentation, I have two ways to get you there. You can grab my full self-paced recorded course on beamtonic.net to learn at your own pace with a lifetime access, assignments and direct Q&A panel below each lesson. Or if you prefer real-time feedback and support, you can join my upcoming live online Revit training where we work together in a small interactive groups to build a complete project from scratch. As a bonus, every live training student gets full access to the complete Revit course, giving you the best of both worlds. Both options are designed to take you from basics to professional architectural documentation smoothly, even if you're transitioning from AutoCAD. Head over to beamtonic.net to check out the curriculum or reserve your spot in the next live group. Now let's jump back to the lesson. Parameters in the title blocks are added by using the label tool. Essentially, we have text and we have the label. Text, just add the fixed text. Basically, it is the text you cannot change later on in your title block, while the label tool allows you to add the text that will essentially read some parameter from your file. So when we have the sheet in our project, we have all of these information, and all of these informations are basically visible here, either in the sheet information. As you can see, we have these identity data where we can add the information who approved, who designed, who checks, etc. Revisions as well. And we also have a lot of information that we can find in the project information. So before actually doing anything, what is required of you is to fill those informations that you want to be read in your project. All of these information like date, status, name, address, etc. needs to be filled before continuing. So I'll just fill quickly all of these information with some generic data. So I filled all of these information and now I will be able to use it on my title block. So I go back and I use the label tool. First, I'm going to set up my fonts because I want to have one font that is for heading that is going to be bold, and then I want to have a font that is just going to be a regular font. So I will rename this 8mm one because I'm not going to be using it, and I'm going to first create the 3mm Arial narrow. I choose the Arial narrow and I assign it the 3mm. I am also going to turn it into the transparent option, and I'm also going to duplicate this one and I'm going to create the same one, only bold. And I check the bold option and I click OK. And now I have created all the fonts for the labels. I'm also going to create the font for the text because I am going to have some fixed text as well that is not going to be a parameter. So I choose the text tool and I'm just going to create 3mm Arial narrow bold for now. I choose the Arial narrow like before, I turn it into 3 and I check the bold and I turn it to transparent. So first with the text, I'm going to just add some headings of the parameters and I, for example, insert the project number. I make sure to align this text box to the line so all of my texts are going to be starting from the same place. I could add this text as the suffix inside the label itself, but this allows me a little bit more flexibility when it comes to the positioning of the text. So I copy this text and I'm going to copy it, for example, 5mm. And I'm just going to add one more line for the scale that is going to be in the bottom. Now, before adding the labels, I'm just going to rename these texts. This is going to be designer parameter, this is going to be drawn by, and this is going to be scale. Now we add the labels. We go to the label tool and I'm going to choose just the regular Arial narrow and I will add the label to the project number. And here we choose one of these parameters. I choose the project number and I simply click this sign to get it to the table on the right. I click OK and this is what we get. I do the same for each of these parameters. Here I select the design by parameter and I add it here. I then add one more label for drawn by. We find that parameter and transfer it to the table to the left, and we do the same for the scale. Below we will add the parameter for the sheet number, and I'm just going to be using this sheet number label and I will add the prefix of number. I click OK and I will turn it to be bold. And as you have probably noticed, we have used the left horizontal alignment and now I'm just going to turn it to the center because I do want this sheet number to always be central. I make sure to get this text box to be a little bit smaller so I can make it central to this entire table. And this is what we get. We can also get these to be a little bit closer to our text so they don't take too much space. I will also add the project name parameter and I want it to be a little bit bigger text, so I'm going to duplicate this Arial narrow bold and I'm going to call it 5mm Arial narrow bold, and I'm going to change the text size to be 5 and I make sure that the align is central here. and I click on the label and I add the project name parameter. I make sure that the horizontal align is center, and I just get it to be a little bit closer to the center. I do the same for the project address. I'm just going to be using this regular 3mm Arial narrow, and I add the project address label. I also make sure that the horizontal line is in center. I'm just going to get this text box to be a little bit bigger, and then I'm going to make it central. I do the same for the project address. And now everything is central, and all that's needed to be added is the sheet name. I add it to the center here. I select the sheet name parameter and I transfer it to the right. I also make sure that it is 5mm Arial narrow bold. I turn it to the center horizontal align, and I make sure that it's central. And this is it. I also want to add one image, and I go to the insert, I import image, I find the image of my logo and I simply click open. I add that image here where I want it to be placed, and I make sure to scale it down to the size that makes sense. So I'm going to place it here. Now we save our title block so it doesn't get imported with this generic name. I find the folder and I give it the name and I simply click save. Now we can click load into the project and our title block will be loaded. Now there are two options of adding the title block to the existing sheet. I can either select this one that exists and I can find the one that I have created. And this is what it looks like. As you can see, all of these information were taken from the project information option. Since I have no view on this sheet, I have no scale, and I don't have the designer and author, and that is because these information are on the sheet directly. They are not the project information, but the information on the sheet itself. And I add this parameter. And this is it about these main parameters. Now let's transfer some view to the sheet, for example, this L1. And once we get this view to the sheet, as you can see, we also have the scale parameter. If you want to see how to handle the sheets with several scales, check out the link from the description below. I have created the tutorial on that topic as well. To fix the way this title is visible, you can go to the edit type and see how this family is called, and once we see that it is called mView title, we can find it in our families. We go to the annotation symbols and we find this family. It is this one, so we can right click on it and click on edit. Now once this family is open, we can simply just stretch this text box so it takes a little bit more of the space. And once we load it into the project, as you can see, everything looks good this time. So the next important topics to cover when we speak of the title blocks and sheets are the revisions, because when we go to this sheet, we can check which revisions we have on the sheet, and here I can check this default revision. If you want me to cover the revisions as a separate lesson, how to create them, how to manage them, post in the comments below. And now that I have checked this revision, we can see that in this sheet that we have created, we have no information on this revision. That is because in this title block, we have to add the revision schedule. I go to the view option and I add the revision schedule. Here we choose which of the parameters we want to create on our revision, and we can, for example, add issued by or issued to. It is not added by default. And here we can get rid of some parameters that we do not need. For example, this revision sequence, I will just leave the revision number, revision date, and revision description. I will just push date to be the first one and click OK. And now this revision schedule is created, so I go back to my sheet and I open views, and I can see now that we have revision schedule under the schedules folder. And we simply add it where we want it to be. Keep in mind that if you have more of these revisions, these are going to take more space. So just make sure to leave enough space for all of these future revisions. I just make sure to get this to be a little bit longer. We are also going to update the fonts, so open the schedule and left click on this revision schedule in the schedules and click on the appearance option, and here you assign the fonts you want your schedule to have. And in the title text, I'm going to be using the Arial Narrow Bold, and in the header text, I'm actually going to have to create the regular Arial Narrow. So I go back to my title block, I go to the text, and I just duplicate this font, remove the bold from the title, and uncheck the bold here. And I go back, and now I can go back to that appearance and change the text of the header and body. I use the Arial Narrow and click OK. And now, as you can see, all of these fonts are matching. I'm just going to change the width of it a little bit so it fits the width of this part of the title block. And I just extend this line and I make sure that this schedule is matching that line. I might have to zoom in a little bit to nudge it, and I also change the width of these columns so they all fit this space. And this is what we get. Now we can load this into our project, and this is what we get. Essentially, it is now going to be reading our revisions. And if I add another revision, let's just add one more revision, let's call it 2, and leave all of these as it is. And I check for the new revision in the sheet itself, we can see that it is going to be adding these revisions below. So just be mindful of the space these revisions are later going to be taking. If I only had 2 revisions, I could just push this schedule a lot less below. Another important thing about the title blocks is that you can also use the guide grid option, where you can create the new guide grid. Let's just call it guide grid 1, and this way you can make sure to fit in the guide grid with your new title block. And let's just make sure that it is something like this. You can also change the guide spacing if some other kind of spacing works for you. Let's say, for example, 50. And now whenever we are adding the views, we can make sure to follow the spacing. As you can see, it is snapping well with the crop view of this view. And now when you open some other title block, let's say this one, for example, you can simply scroll all the way down and choose this guide grid you have created. And of course you can create a couple of these guide grids for the different sort of view representations on the sheets. And this is it for today's lesson. If you have any questions, post in the comments below. If you like my videos, like and subscribe. It means a lot for the channel growth. And thank you for watching, and see you in the next lesson. Bye! If you want to learn Revit like a pro, take a look at my architectural course through the link below. You will learn how to develop the project from concept to final design using Autodesk Revit. It is ideal for beginners, but valuable for anyone looking to build a solid foundation. By the end, you'll know how to take a design from concept to detailed documentation with confidence and clarity. You will gain a solid Revit workflow you can actually use independently or in work in larger teams in architectural studios. With almost 100 structured video lessons, it is designed to help beginners master Revit step by step. To support your progress, I've included assignments with each lesson, plus the opportunity to ask questions and receive guidance directly from me whenever you need it. This way, you're not just watching tutorials, you're actively learning, practicing, and improving every step of the way. Thank you for watching, and see you in the next video.